Hello. Today is Monday, June 22nd. Welcome to episode 610 of Fault Lines, the National Security Institute's podcast that gets you quickly up to speed 3 times a week on the national security and foreign policy debate shaking up America. I'm NSI Advisory Board member Lester Munson. I'm joined today by a full slate, senior fellows John Lipsey, Amy Mitchell, Matt Hayden, and Andrew Boreen. Folks, there's a lot going on in the world. We're going to have a new British Prime Minister in a few days. Keir Starmer is stepping down. When the new person shows up, that'll be the 7th British Prime Minister in 10 years. Also, they've had 2 monarchs. So that's 9 heads of government and heads of state for our British friends. Our original adversary here in the United States of America on our 250th birthday. Also, the World Cup continues. I saw Ecuador and Curacao play to a 0-0 tie. It was very exciting. Highly recommend. I'm now converted to soccer or football or whatever we're calling it. I think if we win the World Cup, everyone else is going to have to call it soccer. That seems reasonable to me. There's other news. The reflecting pool remains a fraught issue in American politics. People have staked out different narratives and different explanations. There's a lot going on with the reflecting pool. I did not get a chance to go see it myself this weekend, I'm sorry to say. Perhaps we can talk about it on a Fault Lines episode after we have an eyewitness account of the reflecting pool. But the big news, and what we're going to talk about ostensibly here, is the ongoing negotiations and or war with Iran. There are now negotiations going on in Switzerland between the United States and Iran. Vice President Vance is there meeting with senior Iranian officials or not. The president is making threats over social media while the vice president is there, and the Iranians will walk out, and then our Qatari and Pakistani friends will bring them back and facilitate further negotiations. There are reports of great progress. There are reports of no progress. There are reports of ships going through the Strait of Hormuz and not going through the Strait of Hormuz. Andrew Boreen, you mentioned the phrase Hormuz fatigue when we were doing our pre-talk. Please explain your views on the Hormuz situation.
Yeah, I've been outed. I think, look, I have an assessment. I think a lot of the world, and in particular, consumers of media, let's not think our little orbit of national security wonk nerds.
Speak for yourself, Andrew.
Yeah. Okay. I'm the Cro-Magnon that snuck in the side door of Nerdland here. But what I want to say is I think that there is some Hormuz fatigue happening. It's starting to feel a bit like Groundhog Day, and maybe that's not the worst thing. Maybe that indicates that this might be kind of a new stability in this spectrum between a defensible peace with international consensus and freedom of navigation in the Strait and all-out war in which there actually are massive JDAM firings and decimation of Iranian infrastructure. But it does seem that we kind of keep hearing the same narrative, and we keep seeing these tit-for-tat proxy activities in the form of the Hezbollah launched missiles into Israel. Israel launches counter attack. And so I think that and there may be some Hormuz fatigue on the ability of the markets or kind of the national interest to digest the minute by minute, hour by hour changes that seem as though they go 180. We're having peace, we're having war, we're having peace, we're having war. And so I'm not sure what to take of that, other than I think it serves as constant media stories that don't change a lot, but distract us from a lot of other really critical foreign policy issues. Like, for instance, you mentioned Keir Starmer resigning. There's been a dust up with Italy's Giorgia Meloni. And I think that there are transatlantic issues. We've lost our eye on Taiwan. I think that, the national security blob, if you will, has a lot of things on its mind that are not only the Strait of Hormuz.
Amy Mitchell, is there a metaphor here of the reflecting pool to describe the situation with the Strait of Hormuz, or no?
Thanks for that awesome tee-up, Les. Yes, there is. And I hate to be the one that continues to be the Debbie Downer on this show. But yes, we have seen the reflecting pool. I flew over it yesterday on my way out of DC. It does not look great. I can show the picture later if anyone wants to see it. But if we can't fix a reflecting pool that is 3 feet deep, we're expected to fix the problems in Iran, which I hate to keep reminding everybody, we started. This is an issue of our own making once again. And as a former head of protocol, what really struck me for the Department of Defense, what really struck me this weekend was these are normally very highly choreographed meetings. You don't put a principal, especially at the level of the vice president, the president, into a situation where you don't control kind of all the risk factors, all the movements, and for Iran to have snubbed the vice president publicly, then walked out, then walked in, have everyone waiting, was really poorly managed. And you also saw what I noticed was Qatar and Pakistan really kind of playing to the Iranians, which was concerning to me, and kind of saying, oh, don't worry about it to the U.S. delegation. So I think, the vice president, I think, has left Switzerland. They are saying that negotiations will continue at a much lower level, i.e. a technical level. But I think that, once again, Iran holds the cards, and we are kind of scrambling and almost, I hate to say, begging for a deal at this point to give the president the off-ramp that he so desperately wants. So going back to the reflecting pool, we're about to drain it for the second time in 2 months. We have the 4th of July, our 250th anniversary, which should have been a huge celebration across the country. And instead, we are looking at an empty pool, an empty agreement, and a lesser standing in the world at 250 years. And I'm going to start crying.
No crying. There's no crying in fault lines. Matt Hayden, our former Vice President Kamala Harris was active this weekend. She said we should use hope as a verb. Hope is a verb. It reminded me of the show Veep, which I don't think is really fair to the former vice president, since the current administration is also making a case for kind of a Veep-like narrative scenario here. What's your take on all of these very interesting issues that seem to be coming together today?
So just to push back a little bit on we started it. I mean, come on, the nuclear aspect of this was attended to by multiple countries, that there was an active reason to engage. The challenge that is accurate is that we do have a list of good things that we saw from the initial action. And what we're trying to prevent is a list of bad things on the way out. And so the trade issues are largely where the president sees success. He sees peace through not just strength, but peace through economic strength. And so national security really rides with a side seat to all the economic drivers that the president is trying to get aligned across the Gulf states. So as long as there is the potential for Iran to allow commerce and participate in commerce in a way that allows that region to be stabilized, the president's fine with it, so long as the nuclear aspects and the original outcomes aren't a part of what comes out the other end. The Iranians don't see it that way. They see it as a military conflict, and they're going to drag out and try and get the next guy to make a worse deal. And so that's where we are right now, is they're using our diplomacy against us, and they're stalling and causing strife to try and basically wait out the clock. And hopefully with midterms turning the House and or Senate on the president to cause more trouble his way. So it's really a clock game. They're hoping they can press the president into doing something more rash. And so it's going to take cooler heads to prevail. And to Andrew's point, it may be the new normal where you have both sides crying wolf to try and keep things candidly quiet. So that's where we see a lot of this going. And to the national security concerns, we do have a lot of mobilized national security officials across the entire country for World Cup right now. This has been one of the largest stand-up for all our folks back wearing the badge right now. And so you have a lot of counter-drone, you have a lot of counterterrorism efforts across the country going full bore all the way through the 4th of July. So it is kind of a tensioned moment where you have a lot of operations going all at the same time for the White House to kind of manage all of this on top of it.
John Lipsey, you've been very active on social media this weekend, and folks, I encourage a follow. It's cutting edge stuff. John, what's your assessment of the current state of U.S. interests as they relate to Iran? Are we in good shape or are we in bad shape?
I mean, it's incredibly messy, as it always is with Iran, and it continues to be. And so total victory does not appear to be imminent. What I was going to, what's on my mind is the MOU and the, we talked about the MOU when it was released or published, or actually it still hasn't been published by the U.S. government last week, but when it was read out apparently to some newspapers last week, and we talked about that there are sort of many versions of the MOU. There's sort of the text, and then there's what Trump says about it, what the Iranians say about it, what's things that were omissions from the MOU, like no tolls that clearly were going to be in there. So I just wanted to take us back to that, and we've started to learn more about what the MOU actually is on the ground, like in put into action. And so, take Lebanon. There's a lot of concern over the linkage with Lebanon. The Iranians have been pressing the U.S. That Israel needs to withdraw from Lebanon, and there was lack of clarity and concern over what that was going to portend. Turns out, Israel isn't going anywhere from southern Lebanon, and we have the president over the weekend truthing out. Iran must immediately stop their highly paid proxies from causing trouble. If they don't, we'll hit Iran very hard. So, I said last week, this deal is basically going to be whatever the president is willing to enforce. And so we started to see him this weekend start to put out where those red lines are going to be for him, starting to actually put shape to the MOU. That was his response on Lebanon, on giving sanctions relief and access to frozen funds. The concern was that it was just immediate, full-scale access and sanctions relief to the whole shebang without any conditions. Turns out, look, they are going to be able to sell oil as long as they open the strait. The frozen funds are going to be much more limited, it appears, and conditions-based. And one of those conditions appears it might be allowing access to IAEA inspectors into the country, which Vance just announced. And he talked about a much more limited access to frozen funds. It appeared the MOU appeared to leave Iran in control of the strait, and for many days it appeared that they were not letting this ships through the strait. They were reimposing tolls, what have you. Turns out that the international waterway is mined and has to be demined. Iran is very much managing, quote unquote, and in control of the northern route by their coast. But it turns out the southern route is open and protected by the U.S. military, and there are no tolls. And what is Trump willing to enforce? He said, he apparently called the Iranians Saturday night and said, you close it and you won't have a country. You won't even make it back to your fucking country from Pakistan, right?
Do we say that word? Do we say that word on Fault Lines?
I'm quoting the president of the United States. What do you want from me? And then, the agreement said it only was no tolls for 60 days, but not beyond that. Well, what does Trump have to say about that? He says no tolls during or after the 60 days, unless they are imposed by the United States, should no deal be completed for services rendered as the guardian angel to the Middle East. So, echoing what Lindsey Graham said, that Trump is, will go in and take over control of the strait, and we'll charge tolls for the benefit. So, to your all's point earlier, how Iranians are taking these types of threats from Trump at this stage, I think is certainly an open question. But he is laying out markers. He is starting to bring form and shape to the MOU. There's plenty in there to debate and critique and criticize, but it is coming into a form that is different and more different than what was in the text, and in a shape that is more in the American interest than I think was at least the concern at the beginning. My sort of last comment here is, Les, you mentioned a number of events going around the world outside of Iran. You missed the election in Colombia, and more importantly, I know you're now a soccer super fan, but tomorrow is AJ Debonsa Day. The NBA draft, the Wizards have the first pick. It's about to change our lives. I'll do a full breakdown on.
It's a golden age.
Yeah,
right
a
now.
golden age, exactly. Who cares about the reflecting pool? We're about to have the biggest star in the NBA coming to Washington.
Amy, do you want to respond to the Debonsa news?
Not to the Debonsa news.
Oh.
I do want to respond to Matt and just be, once again, the sad voice of reality. If everyone recalls, last July, we quote-unquote obliterated Iran's nuclear weapons. So I have a hard time separating reality, right, over the last year from the narrative that the White House keeps putting out of how these negotiations are going, why we started this war. I don't think anyone would argue that Iran has been a problem for half a century. That said, was this the best way to do it? No. On your economic issue or your economic kind of security comment, I've always believed that the United States, our superpower, has been as a force for good in this world, that we are not a transactional country, that we do things because they are right, that they protect democracy and people around the world, whether that's through our aid, our national security policies. And so if we are becoming truly, as you say, that the economic security and transactional nature of this war and the MOU is in our best interest, we have become no better than China. That is China's MO. That has not been our MO. So now you have made me cry even more on our 250th birthday. Thank you, Matt.
I'm gonna tie this back to using hope as a verb. Using obliterate as a verb is it's got its pluses and its minuses. It's like decimate. Decimate. Decimate, obliterate. I hope. We're overheated.
It's not a COA, Les Monson. Hope is not a COA.
Folks, I'm gonna go total foreign policy nerd here, and say that a real issue going on right now is the Iran Nuclear Agreement Review Act, which became law 11 years ago, and limits the president's ability to negotiate nuclear deals with Iran specifically. First, he must turn over any deals, whether written down or not, over to Congress within 5 days of making those deals, including any side deals or secret deals, of which there have been reference to in the current situation. Those have to be turned over to Congress.
Gentlemen's agreements.
Gentlemen's agreements also have to go. Ladies' agreements, gentlemen's agreements, all agreements, stated, unstated, written down, not written down, memorandums of understanding, etc.
Les, can I just say enforceability matters on all things? The law.
Yeah. Congress.
And I want to bring this up because you're not wrong. You're not wrong. However, let's look at Iran-Contra and who actually enforcers go to jail if the White House doesn't follow a congressional rule about process. And so I think that
Andrew Bereen.
Yes,
there is also the impeachment clause in the Constitution. Congress does have the ability to protect its interests here. Further, the president is not allowed to waive any sanctions for a month after making an agreement with Iran. That is going to be the thing that is really interesting. Is the president going to is he going to waive any of the sanctions Congress has imposed on Iran during that time? Everyone should go back and review the Iran Nuclear Agreement Review Act. Even critic Andrew McCarthy of the National Review points out that these are good provisions that could make American foreign policy better. Okay, that's a wrap. Thanks to Grace Trice, Claude Jennings, the NSI staff for their help in producing today's episode. Join us on Wednesday, June 24th for another episode of Fault Lines, the National Security Institute's podcast that gets you smart fast on the national security and foreign policy debate shaking up America. We're on YouTube. Check out our channel there for a video of today's episode. Maybe we'll put up Amy's photo of the reflecting pool from the airplane on that. If you like what you heard or saw, be sure to rate, review, and subscribe.